Everybody, and I believe that I will start my speech by the end. After what our last speaker told us, I just want you to remember that at the last election, we had 850,000 people who voted for the PPC, who voted for their values. So usually what I'm saying at the end of my speeches, I said, if each one of you, each one of these voters are able to find 10 more supporters, and by the way, you may have 3 years to do that. If each one of you is able to find 10 more supporters, we'll be at 8 million votes, and we will win. So yes, it's a question of relationship and speaking to your friends, and don't be afraid, like I said this morning, to speak about what you believe. And if you really believe it, you will speak with your heart, and people will listen to you because they will be surprised to have a deep, profound discussion about the future of our country, the future for our children. So usually, that's the end of my speech. And I'm asking you to be out there and to be activists and to be proud of what we want to do as a movement, as a political party. But also, I want to let you know that if you're speaking about your friends and your family about us, you have my insurance that we won't change as a political party. We won't go with the wind, or we won't be politically correct because it's the way to maybe being in government faster. That's not our style. We like the big fight, the ideological fight, and that's why, our platform, like I said, the one that we had and when we created the party, based on 4 principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And all our policies are in line with that. They won't change. What I said at our first election in 2019, I said the same thing at the last election in 2021, and that will be the same platform at the next general election. But try to go to the website of the Liberals, of the Conservative, and try to find their platform. You won't be able to find it because the election is over. So you won't be able. They will do focus group polling just before the election, and they will come with their new electoral platform in line with the new ideas coming from the left. Because yes, also our Conservative Party here in Canada is also only conservative in name. And by speaking like leftists and promoting leftist ideologies, and being scared to speak about family values, being scared about saying, in our Constitution, that this country is based on Judeo-Christian values, it's based on supremacy of God and the rule of law. They won't speak about it. And so that's why they're only conservative in name. That's why, if you have Poilievre or Trudeau, it will be the same. Poilievre is there to be prime minister. And to be prime minister, he will have to do compromise and to go to the left, to have more seat in the big GTA in Ontario. There's more seat in the big GTA, than in Alberta, the province of Alberta. And he will try to please and pander to these people over there and to the people near Vancouver. So that's why you'll see the real Pierre Poilievre when the time will come, just before the election. And we are here also to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the Freedom Trucker Convoy. And yes, that was a great time in our history, I believe so. And we had a testimony tonight. And I was there, and a lot of you were there also. And speaking about believing in values, freedom, it's part of us. We believe that the government must let you do what you want to do. And yes, we were arguing for freedom of choice, and I did that in the beginning of that pandemic, and it was not popular because, as you know, fear and propaganda was very efficient. And yes, they use fear and propaganda to change our behavior. And during these lockdowns and curfews, you had about 60% of the population who agreed with all that at that time because they were scared about the situation. And so that's why you didn't have any opposition here in Parliament, and you didn't have any opposition also at the provincial level, because if you are a politician in the opposition, your main goal is to be in government. You want to be in government, and when you see the polls that 65% of the population are okay with the lockdowns, you go with the win. You won't oppose. And that's what the Conservatives did. But we were in the street together when it was not popular. And after the Freedom Convoy, it was more popular to speak about freedom of choice. And that's why Polyev came and did a photo op with the truckers, because it was not risky at that time to be out there. But he didn't have the courage to be really in Parliament, in front of the Parliament, just out there. The photo op was, that's it for him, was that. But yes, I was there, we were there, and I remember that time. They had a stage with a big truck, and they had speeches. And in the beginning, they said, oh, we don't want any politician here. It's not political. We want the doctors, nurses to speak. And so when I said, I deliver speeches all across the country 2 years ago. And I believe at what I'm saying. And so people said, yeah, we need to have Maxime on the stage. And I was on the stage speaking about our values and being with people and working with them, being there every weekend. And I must say that I ended my speech all the time. And at that time, I believe the crowd knew, because I was on the stage a Saturday and a Sunday, and for 15 in between two doctors. And at the end of my speech, I was quoting a politician from US, a Democrat, John F. Kennedy. But I'm not Democrat, as you know. But I was quoting Kennedy. I was quoting him in his inaugural speech in 1962. And he said in that speech, in the long history of the world, only few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its maximum hour of danger. You are that generation. This is your role. And now is the time. We must defend freedom against these authoritarian governments right now together. And we were successful. And so we must do that because we don't have any mandates anymore. And other governments just ended the mandate a couple of weeks after the Freedom Convoy. So we won the argument. Yes, we have the best ideas. And now it's about wokeism. It's about globalism. So it's very in and politically correct to be a woke organization, or thinking that a man is not a man and a woman is maybe not a woman, and you can change your sex. And it's not popular to say there's only two sexes, male and female. You know, it's a huge controversy right now. I just want to tell you, I tweeted about that. I had about 225,000 followers. When I did that tweet a day, no, that was at the end of a day, I think it was a Sunday night, and I said to my wife, I'm going to tweet that, you know. There's only two sexes, men and women. No, I said male and female. And she said, why are you doing that? We know it. We don't have to tweet about that. I said, yes, you and me, we know it. But I think it's important for people to remember that. So I did that tweet. And you know, there's a good news and a bad news. So the good news is I had thousands of likes. I think maybe 35,000 of likes. So that was good. Hey, okay, that's great. My wife told me, Maxime, you have a lot of comments. You must read it. The bad news is more than 50% of the comments were against me. They were saying, no, there's no two sexes. There's 20 genders and all that. And so more than half of the comments were negative. So that's the situation today. So the common sense must prevail. And that's what we are doing at the PPC. The common sense. And that's why I believe that our time will come. And yes, here in this writing, 1% in 2019, 10% at the last election. I can tell you my role as the leader of the People's Party is to be out there and to speak to you and answering your questions. I want you to know pretty well our platform and to be able to have a discussion and to be able to engage with your friends and your family about you. And after that, it will be the PPC. I want you people to understand what is your vision for this country. And I believe that your vision for this country is for more freedom, more autonomy, a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect your provincial jurisdictions, that will respect you, that won't spend money that we don't have. And because of that, now we have that inflation. That inflation about 6%, but you know that the real inflation rate in Canada must be between 10 and 12%. And inflation is a tax. Because of that inflation, we are poor every day. We need to stop that. We have inflation because our government, supported by the Conservative, in the beginning of that pandemic, decided, oh, it's so dangerous, that virus, we must shut down the economy. And you know what? We're going to give money to every Canadian and to businesses to stay closed. And they think that was a great idea. And actually, it was a good idea because all these other Western countries did the same. They shut down their economy, create huge deficit because they didn't have any money like us. And so what happened? The Conservative, the Liberals, they voted for that because they didn't have the courage to tell their people that, no, we must protect the most vulnerable and reopen the economy. That virus is not deadly for the huge majority of the population. So we had the data at that time. And no, they go ahead and Poilievre and the Conservative voted for these deficit, and we had a deficit of $450 billion. And the Bank of Canada used the Canadian credit card and created money out of thin air. But when you have more money chasing fewer goods, you have inflation. And now you have Poilievre that is saying we must fight inflation. The best way to fight inflation is to say to the Bank of Canada, stop printing money out of thin air. But for the Bank of Canada, inflation is good. They have a target. The Bank of Canada has a target of 2% inflation every year. For them, it's good. But you know what? The last 10 years, starting in 2012 up to 2022, with that 2% inflation every year, they created 25% inflation So what I'm telling you, your dollar that you had in your pocket in 2012, the value of that dollar today, it's 80 cents. So our purchasing power is going down, our standard of living is going down, and we are all poor. Because Statistics Canada said that this year, the average increase in income for Canadians this year will be about 5%. But when you have inflation of 6 officially, but really 10%, if you have only 5% increase in your salary, you are losing 5%. You are poor by 5%. So that's the situation of today. But Polyev said, oh, we need to fight inflation. But he's okay with the 2% inflation that the Bank of Canada has. If you're really serious about that, the Bank of Canada must have a target of 0%. Like that, everybody will keep our purchasing power and would be richer. So Polyev, what he's saying, it's okay for the next 10 years. You'll have another 25% inflation. And he's saying that he won't cut the budget. What he said, oh, for each new spending, for each new dollar in spending, I will cut $1 in expenses. So it will be the same big fat budget. But in Sweden, last November, because they had inflation also like here, the government said over there, that's it, we are serious to fight inflation. They didn't like that 6% inflation that they had. So the only way to fight inflation is to speak to our central bank, no more creation of money out of thin air, and it's for us politicians to balance the budget. Like that, our central bank won't have to print money out of thin air because we will balance our budget. And Sweden will have a balanced budget this March. They're serious about it. So we need to have this debate. We need to be serious for the future of this country. And that's what we are doing. We are doing that fight on inflation, on common sense, speaking against the critical race theory. First time I hear that, critical race theory. What's that? What's that? And I was learning about it, and I said, my God, they want our children not to be proud to be white, and because they must be, ashamed of the color of their skin. But we must not judge people based on the color of their skin. It must be based on their character. Now you know what they did about racism? I was the only politician who said there's no systemic racism in our country. I said that 2 years ago. Oh, no, there's no systemic racism in Canada. Canadians are not racist. But yes, we have one act, one legislation called the Indian Act. It's based on race, it's racist, and we must abolish that. So that's a position from our party, to abolish the Indian Act because it's a racist, it's based on race. And that's the only thing in Canada. But what they did in Ottawa last week, they had a show, an exposition for only black people. That's racism. That's racism. Let's end all that together and, speak against that. And I want to tell you another anecdote. At every election, we, the party, receive a call from a journalist. The last election, that was from the CBC. And they have a nice question that they ask us as a political party. How many black candidates do you have? How many Jewish candidates do you have? How many LTBG, candidates do you have? All that. And so the journalists call, and so my people told them, we don't know. So they said, okay, we will print that story in 2 days. So you have the time, we will call other political parties, and we'll come back. So the journalist did his job, called all these other establishment political parties, the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Green, the Bloc Québécois. And so the journalist called back. And he said, you were ready to print our story. We had the answer from all these other establishment, they didn't say establishment, but all your competitors. And so we have the numbers for them. So do you have the result? How many black candidates do you have? And I said, give me the phone. And I said to the journalist, I don't know. And they said, why you don't know? Because I don't want to know. It's not important for us. They must share our values, and that's it. That's all. It's not important if you're black, white, or Jewish, or Muslim. You share our values, you're welcome, and you can be a candidate for us. So when I'm telling you that we are doing politics differently, that's the case. We are different, and we are proud of that. Because we know deep inside that we have the right vision for our country. And we know the more we speak about it openly, with passion and conviction, the more support we will have. And that's happening. That's happening on different issues. So that's us, the People's Party. And that's why I'm very proud to be with you today. We share our same values, but we have a lot of work to do. And I know that, it's not your job. You have other things to do in life. You have to bring money in home for your family and working hard. And I understand that with inflation and maybe we may have a recession, times are tough. What I'm asking you, when you have time, if you can give us 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day, it's up to you to just be with your friend and speaking with them about the situation of our country. And I believe that they will have some point that they will agree with you, some issue that they will agree with you. And after that, later, you can speak about our party and what we want to achieve. So that's why I said we are a populist party, a smart populist party, because we have a smart vision, a real vision for this country, based on facts, based on our history, based on science concerning COVID-19. So smart populist party with common sense ideas. That's the definition of our party. And I can tell you that we can grow. And I will tell you another anecdote. During the last campaign, I was in Halifax. And I delivered a speech during the electoral campaign over there, outside in a park. And I said at the end of my speech, because of our values, and I was very in my speech, and I said, we are the only real conservative party in Canada. We are the only real conservative party that is defending conservative values, and blah, blah, blah. So the crowd was very happy, and yeah. But after my speech, like I'm doing usually, mingling with people, shaking hands, taking photos, speaking with real people, and an old lady, not old. She was maybe 70 years old, but my dad is 88, so she was young. So she came to me and she said, Maxime, I liked everything that you said. That was great. Oh, that was real. Thank you very much. You feel great. Except one thing. At the end of your speech, something that I didn't like and something that I didn't believe in it. You said, you are the only real conservative party. I said, yes. Maxime, I voted NDP all my life. And for the first time, I will vote for you. Not because you are a real conservative party, because you are a common sense party. And I don't want you to say that again. If you want to describe your party, You just I've read your platform, and it's all about common sense, and that's why I voted NDP, and I'm able to vote for you. So I said, you're right. We are a common sense party. And that's why I won't say that anymore. We are a real family, values, common sense, political party. That's us. And so that's why we can attract people coming from the NDP. Because now the NDP in Canada, it's a woke organization. That's not the NDP who used to work and fight for the workers under Ed Broadbent and Jack Layton. So we are able to attract them. And also, we can grow, as you know, 40% of the population didn't vote at the last election at the federal level. 40% of them. And these people, I believe, decided not to vote because they're looking at politicians and they must say they're all the same. They're saying something a day and the opposite the other day. And the conservative or the liberal, they're all corrupt. So we need to be speaking with them and telling them, we are different. And that's why I like when somebody is telling me, Maxime, you're not a real politician. That's the nicest compliment that I can have. So we are different. And if we have only 0.5% of these people who decided not to vote at the last election and are voting, 0.5% of them will be at 20%. So that's why we can grow from former conservative voters, yes, former NDP voters, people who didn't vote. And that's why I believe that this party has a huge future. And we will be together to change this country. So I just want to end and I will read my thought about the Freedom Convoy. I thought about that, and like Glenn, like you did, I wrote something about my experience over there, and I think it's very pertinent for our discussion tonight. 1 year ago, we got to watch a landmark moment in Canadian history. The largest human rights protest Canada has ever seen. The most inspiring act of peaceful civil disobedience I have ever experienced. Yes, that was the Freedom Convoy. After 2 years of government tyranny, of lockdowns and travel bans, of curfews and stay-at-home orders, of government pitting families and friends against each other, of propaganda and psychological manipulation, brave Canadian truckers started a movement that would wake up a nation and inspire the world. Starting from the west and then the east, they made their way to Ottawa. The line of trucks and cars grew as they passed through each city and province. Patriotic Canadians gathered on highway overpasses, waving flags and raising homemade signs. The career politician, the establishment who walked the halls of Parliament were reminded that these buildings, this country, belong to us. We are a proud people, not to be treated like cogs in some broken machine. Justin Trudeau smeared the protesters as racist and xenophobe. According to him, yes, you said it, we were a small fringe minority with unacceptable views. And I must add, the fake news media, the legacy media, I don't like to call them the mainstream media, We are mainstream. They are not. The corporate media painted it as an occupation. They claimed the citizens of downtown Ottawa were being terrorized and lied about protesters committing arson and other crimes. You are right about that. That was peaceful in Ottawa. But I was there. Some of you were there. I was there in person, and I experienced it firsthand. And I can tell you, it was the most beautiful, peaceful, and patriotic event I have ever seen. After 2 years of misery and discrimination, of being separated from friends and family, there was a sense of love and togetherness in the streets of Ottawa. People were proud to be Canadian again. But just as pride and patriotism were resurging in Canada, Justin Trudeau stumped it out like a campfire at the end of the night. He scapegoated popular streamer Jeremy McKenzie and smeared an internet joke as some sort of terrorist cell. He gave himself unprecedented powers meant to protect Canadians at time of war. He weaponized the financial sector, shutting down fundraisers and freezing people's bank accounts without due process. Stormtroopers took to the streets, trampling people with horses. I saw that. We were brutally reminded that the tyrants are still in control. Even though the Freedom Convoy was violently crushed, it was still a brilliant success. Yes, it was a success because public opinion turned, provincial governments started quietly to drop mandates and restrictions. And in the year since the convoy, the political establishment has done everything they can to sap the momentum out of this populist uprising. The corporate media are still vilifying protesters and preventing the other side of the story from being told. The courts have delayed important cases or refused to hear them. And I had a case. As you know, I was fighting for our freedom to travel across this country, and we had a case against the federal government. It took months before the court decided to hear us, and after that, we didn't win. They said, no, that's not a question of the Charter of Rights. We are appealing this case right now. But that was the case all across the country. Yes, courts delayed cases and in some time refused to hear it. But we must not forget what the tyrannical liberals did to us. We must not forget what the NDP and the Bloc Québécois enabled. We must not forget what the Conservatives failed to oppose. We must, together, recapture the fervor and passion of the Freedom Convoy and start fighting now to make changes at the next election. After filling the streets of Ottawa with the people, we must fill the House of Commons with People's Party MP. That's our job, to have People's Party's MPs elected at the next election, and that revolution will start in Parliament. With People's Party MPs, that is, with citizens who understand that Canada is on the wrong path and are ready to get us back on track. We must continue what the Freedom Convoy started. And you know what the Freedom Convoy started. They started a true populist revolution in our country, and it's our job today to work on that populist revolution, because I can tell you, if we have an election in a year or 2 years or 3 years, we will have a huge impact for the future of this country, because yes, we will make history. I can tell you that we will have at least, minimum, one candidate, People's Party candidate, that will be elected. And that is my job as the leader, to be elected. But I can tell you, I may not be alone. And I count on you to help me to have more candidates elected and to start that revolution in Parliament. We are able to do that together because we are speaking about the truth based on facts and from the heart. So thank you very much. I count on you, and you can count on me. Thank you.